In a quiet suburb just outside Charlotte, North Carolina, a store manager named Mr. Collins does what he's done too many times before. Spots a black kid walking through his store alone, hoodie up, hands in his pockets, and assumes the worst. The kid is 12. Name's Tyrell. Skinny. Wears beat-up sneakers, a worn-out backpack, and a look that says he knows he's already being watched. Tyrell picks up a loaf of bread, a carton of milk, and a pack of store-brand toilet paper, just like his mom asked. But as he walks toward the checkout line, Mr. Collins cuts him off in front of a growing crowd. "Let me see your bag," he says. "We've had trouble with kids like you before." Tyrell freezes. He hasn't even stepped past the exit. He says he didn't steal anything, but nobody listens. Someone starts filming. A few customers back away. Mr. Collins grabs Tyrell's backpack, dumps it out on the counter, and calls the police. And what do they find? Nothing. But the real twist? What Mr. Collins doesn't know is who Tyrell's mother is, and what she's about to do. Because this time, they didn't just target the wrong boy. They messed with the wrong mother. What would you do if this happened to your child? Thumbs up, like if you believe poverty is not a crime. Bell subscribe if you're tired of silence protecting racism. Speech balloon, drop a comment with where you're watching from and whether this still happens where you live. Tyrell knew how to move through a space without being noticed, not because he wanted to be invisible, but because he had learned at 12 years old that sometimes invisibility kept you safe. He knew when to speak and when not to, knew how to walk through certain aisles in certain stores with his hands visible, knew that hoodies made people nervous and backpacks made people suspicious. He didn't learn that from TV. He learned it from living. He and his mom, Danielle, lived in Brookwood Terrace, a low-income housing complex on the edge of Charlotte. The buildings were boxy and beige, with rusted stairwells and uneven pavement. The air always carried a mix of fried food, cigarette smoke, and tired music from someone's speaker down the hall. But Danielle kept their apartment spotless. Bleach scrubbed floors, folded clothes, not a single dish left in the sink. "We might not have much," she always said, "but we don't live like animals." Danielle was 36, a single mom, and tougher than any woman Tyrell had ever met, including the ones on the corner yelling at full-grown men. She worked 2 jobs, early mornings cleaning office buildings in Uptown and evenings bussing tables at a mid-range restaurant that served overpriced chicken sandwiches and pretended to be farm to table. She never missed a shift, and she never let Tyrell forget the rules of their life. Look people in the eye, but don't stare them down. Don't argue with adults, even when they're wrong, especially when they're white and in uniform. Keep your shoes clean. Don't ever let them catch you slipping. Tyrell took it all in, word for word, step by step. He was a quiet kid, thoughtful, the type who noticed when someone's shoelaces were untied or when the teacher changed their tone, depending on who was asking the question. He liked drawing, sketching buildings, sneakers, animals. He had dreams of becoming an architect, though he never said it out loud. Seemed too far, too bold. But in his sketchbook, anything was possible. In his head, whole cities lived. He had one friend, Isaiah, who lived in the building next door. They rode bikes together in the parking lot, made up handshakes, and dared each other to talk to girls they both pretended not to like. Isaiah was louder, brasher, and had already been suspended twice this year for talking back. Tyrell had learned from him what not to do. On weekends, if Danielle wasn't working a double shift, she and Tyrell would walk to the grocery store together. They knew which stores accepted EBT without looking at them sideways, which clerks didn't talk down, and which aisles to avoid when they were stocking expensive stuff. But that Saturday was different. Danielle had an extra shift. Her coworker had called out. She didn't want to leave Tyrell alone all day, so she gave him a short list: milk, bread, toilet paper, and a $10 bill folded twice tucked into a Ziploc in his hoodie pocket. "You go to Pine Mart," she said, "not the gas station. You hear me?" "Yeah," Tyrell said. "No talking to nobody. In and out." "I got it. And you text me the second you leave." "I know." She looked at him long, then softened just a little. "You're a good kid," she said. "Don't forget that." Tyrell nodded. That was all she said. That's how Danielle loved, in looks and warnings and perfectly packed bags. Tyrell slung on his backpack, the one with the frayed strap he'd sewn shut with dental floss, and started the walk to Pine Mart. It was a 20-minute trip if you cut through the parking lots and the empty field behind the medical center. He knew which fences had holes, which sidewalks had cracks wide enough to twist your ankle. He walked fast, hoodie up, not because it was cold, it was spring, but because he always felt smaller that way. He passed rows of townhomes, small business offices, and the nicer part of the neighborhood, where people jogged with AirPods in and didn't wave back. He passed a little girl on a pink scooter. She waved. He waved back. Then he saw a Pine Mart. It was the kind of grocery store where everything looked new and sterile. The carts didn't squeak. The fruit was misted every 10 minutes. The workers wore matching polos and practiced fake smiles. Tyrell hated it. He stepped inside and immediately felt it. Eyes. A security guard near the entrance straightened his posture. A white woman by the produce section clutched her purse just a little closer. The air in these stores always felt colder. Not because of the AIC, because of what people assumed. Tyrell didn't look at anyone. He walked straight to the bread aisle. One loaf of wheat bread, $1.79. Next, the dairy section. One carton of 2% milk, $2.39. Then, the paper aisle, cheapest 4-pack of toilet paper, $1.99. He did the math in his head as he walked. 1.79 plus 2.39 plus 1.99 is equal to 6.17. Add tax? Still under 10. Good. He placed the items gently into his backpack. Not hidden, just carried. The way his mom always did when she didn't want to pay for a bag. He zipped it up halfway, kept the receipt in his pocket, and headed for the front. That's when he heard it. Hey, you! He turned. The store manager, tall, stocky salt and pepper hair, red face, was pointing right at him. You pay for that. Tyrell froze. Yes, sir. You got a receipt? Tyrell reached into his pocket slowly, like his mom taught him. Don't make any sudden moves. He pulled it out and held it up, but the man was already walking toward him, eyes hard. Let me see your bag. Tyrell's mouth opened. Sir, I didn't. Let me see it. People started watching. Phones were coming out. Tyrell could feel it happening in slow motion, the shift from being a kid running errands to being that kid. He looked around for help. None came. And then, before he could respond, the manager grabbed his backpack and yanked it open. Milk, bread, toilet paper, nothing else. No candy bars, no electronics, no razors, no stolen goods, just groceries. The manager stared at the contents, blinking. Then, as if that wasn't enough, he pulled out his phone. I'm calling the cops. Tyrell's chest tightened. I didn't do anything, he said, his voice breaking. You look like someone we've had trouble with before. I didn't. But the call had already gone through. The last thing Tyrell saw before the manager turned his back, a woman outside in a gray hoodie stepping out of a beat-up sedan. Her eyes locked on him through the glass. And Tyrell's knees went weak. Because it wasn't just anyone. It was his mom, Danielle, and she had seen the whole thing. Danielle didn't remember opening her car door. Inside a clean, overly bright grocery store. A young black boy, 12 years old, skinny, wearing a faded teal hoodie over a graphic t-shirt and an old backpack with one frayed strap. His eyes skinned the shelves. He walks slowly down the aisle filled with colorful snack bags. His movements are cautious, hands kept clearly visible, posture slightly tense, shoulders forward. The camera follows him in a side-track shot at 24 frames per second, smooth motion, capturing his quiet focus. Background blur softens other shoppers. Ambient store sounds, humming of fridges, soft beep from a register. The lighting is fluorescent and slightly harsh. Tyrell pauses in front of the shelf, grabs a loaf of bread with care, and gently places it into his backpack, which remains half-zipped, nothing hidden. He breathes slowly, as if reminding himself to stay calm. He glances to the side, sensing someone watching him. Tyrell knew how to move through a space without being noticed. Not because he wanted to be invisible, but because he had learned at 12 years old that sometimes invisibility kept you safe. He knew when to speak and when not to, knew how to walk through certain aisles in certain stores with his hands visible, knew that hoodies made people nervous and backpacks made people suspicious. He didn't learn that from TV. He learned it from living. He and his mom, Danielle, lived in Brookwood Terrace, a low-income housing complex on the edge of Charlotte. The buildings were boxy and beige, with rusted stairwells and uneven pavement. The air always carried a mix of fried food, cigarette smoke, and tired music from someone's speaker down the hall. But Danielle kept their apartment spotless. Bleach scrubbed floors, folded clothes, not a single dish left in the sink. "We might not have much," she always said, "but we don't live like animals." Danielle was 36, a single mom, and tougher than any woman Tyrell had ever met, including the ones on the corner yelling at full-grown men. She worked 2 jobs, early mornings cleaning office buildings in Uptown, and evenings bussing tables at a mid-range restaurant that served overpriced chicken sandwiches and pretended to be farm to table. She never missed a shift, and she never let Tyrell forget the rules of their life. Look people in the eye, but don't stare them down. Don't argue with adults, even when they're wrong, especially when they're white and in uniform. Keep your shoes clean. Don't ever let them catch you slipping. Tyrell took it all in, word for word, step by step. He was a quiet kid, thoughtful, the type who noticed when someone's shoelaces were untied or when the teacher changed their tone, depending on who was asking the question. He liked drawing, sketching buildings, sneakers, animals. He had dreams of becoming an architect, though he never said it out loud. Seemed too far, too bold. But in his sketchbook, anything was possible. In his head, whole cities lived. He had one friend, Isaiah, who lived in the building next door. They rode bikes together in the parking lot, made up handshakes, and dared each other to talk to girls they both pretended not to like. Isaiah was louder, brasher, and had already been suspended twice this year for talking back. Tyrell had learned from him what not to do. On weekends, if Danielle wasn't working a double shift, she and Tyrell would walk to the grocery store together. They knew which stores accepted EBT without looking at them sideways, which clerks didn't talk down, and which aisles to avoid when they were stocking expensive stuff. But that Saturday was different. Danielle had an extra shift. Her coworker had called out. She didn't want to leave Tyrell alone all day, so she gave him a short list: milk, bread, toilet paper, and a $10 bill folded twice, tucked into a Ziploc in his hoodie pocket. "You go to Pine Mart," she said, "not the gas station. You hear me?" "Yeah," Tyrell said. "No talking to nobody. In and out." "I got it. And you text me the second you leave." "I know." She looked at him long, then softened just a little. "You're a good kid," she said. "Don't forget that." Tyrell nodded. That was all she said. That's how Danielle loved, in looks and warnings and perfectly packed bags. Tyrell slung on his backpack, the one with the frayed strap he'd sewn shut with dental floss, and started the walk to Pine Mart. It was a 20-minute trip if you cut through the parking lots and the empty field behind the medical center. He knew which fences had holes, which sidewalks had cracks wide enough to twist your ankle. He walked fast, hoodie up, not because it was cold, it was spring, but because he always felt smaller that way. He passed rows of townhomes, small business offices, and the nicer part of the neighborhood, where people jogged with AirPods in and didn't wave back. He passed a little girl on a pink scooter. She waved. He waved back. Then he saw Pine Mart. It was the kind of grocery store where everything looked new and sterile. The carts didn't squeak. The fruit was misted every 10 minutes. The workers wore matching polos and practiced fake smiles. Tyrell hated it. He stepped inside and immediately felt it. Eyes. A security guard near the entrance straightened his posture. A white woman by the produce section clutched her purse just a little closer. The air in these stores always felt colder. Not because of the AIC, because of what people assumed. Tyrell didn't look at anyone. He walked straight to the bread aisle. 1 loaf of wheat bread, $1.79. Next, the dairy section. 1 carton of 2% milk, $2.39. Then, the paper aisle, cheapest 4-pack of toilet paper, $1.99. He did the math in his head as he walked. 1.79 plus 2.39 plus 1.99 is equal to 6.17. Add tax? Still under 10. Good. He placed the items gently into his backpack. Not hidden, just carried, the way his mom always did when she didn't want to pay for a bag. He zipped it up halfway, kept the receipt in his pocket, and headed for the front. That's when he heard it. "Hey, you!" He turned. The store manager, tall, stocky salt and pepper hair, red face, was pointing right at him. "You pay for that?" Tyrell froze. "Yes, sir." "You got a receipt?" Tyrell reached into his pocket slowly, like his mom taught him. "Don't make any sudden moves." He pulled it out and held it up, but the man was already walking toward him, eyes hard. "Let me see your bag." Tyrell's mouth opened. "Sir, I didn't." "Let me see it." People started watching. Phones were coming out. Tyrell could feel it happening in slow motion, the shift from being a kid running errands to being that kid. He looked around for help. None came. And then, before he could respond, the manager grabbed his backpack and yanked it open. Milk, bread, toilet paper, nothing else. No candy bars, no electronics, no razors, no stolen goods, just groceries. The manager stared at the contents, blinking. Then, as if that wasn't enough, he pulled out his phone. "I'm calling the cops." Tyrell's chest tightened. "I didn't do anything," he said, his voice breaking. "You look like someone we've had trouble with before." "I didn't." But the call had already gone through. The last thing Tyrell saw before the manager turned his back? A woman outside in a gray hoodie stepping out of a beat-up sedan. Her eyes locked on him through the glass. And Tyrell's knees went weak. Because it wasn't just anyone. It was his mom, Danielle, and she had seen the whole thing. Danielle didn't remember opening her car door. 1 second, she was watching her son through the windshield, standing frozen inside Pine Mart, his backpack halfway unzipped, some red-faced white man yelling at him in front of everyone. The next second, her body was already moving fast, steady, like her feet had made the decision before her mind caught up. She didn't run. She walked. Slow, deliberate, every step like a countdown. The automatic doors parted with that sharp mechanical whine. Customers turned. 1 or 2 gasped. Phones were already out. Danielle didn't look at them. Her eyes were on one thing only, Tyrell. He stood still, small, stunned, like someone had unplugged him. His shoulders were tense, but his face was worse. It was scared, but not in the way kids get scared of monsters. This was a different kind of fear. The kind that black mothers recognize instantly. The kind that means someone's about to make you disappear. "Tyrell," she said. His head snapped toward her. "Mama," he whispered. Danielle turned to the manager, who was still clutching the backpack like it held a ticking bomb. "You want to explain to me," she said, her voice low and razor-sharp, "why you're grabbing my son's things like he stole from you?" The manager flinched. "Ma'am, this is store policy." He was acting suspicious, and I have the right to— "You got a receipt," she snapped at Tyrell. He held it up. She grabbed it, scanned it, everything checked out. She turned back to the manager, stepped in close. "You put your hands on my son?" "Ma'am, he fit the description. We've had some incidents lately, and—" "He fit the description?" "Dark hoodie, backpack, loitering." Danielle's jaw tightened. "You just described half the damn basketball team." The doors slid open again. 2 police officers walked in. 1 white, 1 Latino, hands resting near their belts. Not drawn, but not relaxed either. Danielle exhaled once, softly, then turned to face them. "You here for him?" she asked, pointing at Tyrell. The white cop blinked, caught off guard by her tone. We received a call about a possible theft in progress involving a juvenile." "A what?" "Ma'am, we just need to speak to the store manager." "No," Danielle said. "You need to speak to me. That's my son. He's 12. He bought groceries. With cash. With a receipt. And this man," she jabbed a finger at the manager, "decided that was enough reason to grab him and call you. Now, tell me, are you arresting him?" The Latino officer shifted. Ma'am, no one's being arrested right now. You sure? 'Cause he already got tried and convicted in aisle 7. People were watching now. The store was dead quiet, except for the faint hum of the refrigerators. The manager spoke again, quieter this time. Look, this is all just a misunderstanding. Danielle turned, slow. You humiliated my son in public. You made him feel like a criminal. And now you want to call it a misunderstanding? He didn't respond. She turned to Tyrell, knelt in front of him. You okay, baby? He nodded just barely. His hands were still shaking. She stood again, pulled out her phone. The manager's eyes widened. What are you doing? Danielle didn't answer. She opened her camera. Hit record. Then she turned it on herself. My name is Danielle Simmons. I'm here at Pine Mart in Charlotte, North Carolina, where my 12-year-old son was accused of stealing by this man right here, without cause, without proof, and after showing a valid receipt. The police were called. He was publicly humiliated. For what? Being a black kid in a hoodie? The manager tried to step away from the frame. She followed him. You want to accuse a child of theft? You can be in the video, too. Ma'am, you can't film in here. Oh, I'm sorry. Are there signs about that? 'Cause you didn't seem to care about policy when you snatched his bag without consent. One of the officers raised a hand. Ma'am, maybe we can step outside. No, she said, turning the camera toward him. Y'all walked in here for a report of a black male, juvenile, possibly armed. That's what the call said, right? The white cop glanced at his partner. Danielle's voice sharpened. Yeah, thought so. You were ready for the worst. And what you found was a scared little boy with milk and toilet paper. Her phone buzzed, a message from her coworker. Danielle glanced at the name. She sent a single word back. Recording. Within 30 minutes, the video was posted, and it spread. Fast, not just because of what happened, but because of how she said it. Clear, controlled, furious but articulate, the way only a woman who's had to fight every damn day for respect could say it. By nightfall, it had 12,000 views. By the next morning, 112,000. Tyrell sat at the kitchen table, still quiet, still processing. Danielle paced the living room, phone ringing nonstop. She ignored the news outlets, ignored the store manager's apology, ignored the local pastor who called offering to mediate. She didn't want mediation. She wanted accountability. Tyrell looked up. Am I in trouble, he asked. Danielle turned. No, baby. You didn't do anything wrong. But I was scared. She sat beside him. You were scared. And you stood still. And you didn't run. That makes you brave. Don't let nobody tell you different. He leaned into her. She wrapped her arms around him. And for the first time since it happened, Tyrell cried. By that weekend, protests had started outside Pine Mart. Not riots, not chaos, just people, signs, chants, voices, some from the neighborhood, some who'd seen the video and just felt it, felt the gut punch of watching a child be treated like a suspect in the most ordinary place on earth. A grocery store. The store was forced to release a statement. The manager was placed on leave. But Danielle wasn't finished. She filed a formal civil rights complaint through the NAACP. She contacted a lawyer. She contacted the school board, too, because this wasn't just about a grocery store. It was about how many other places had already quietly decided who her son was allowed to be. And Tyrell? He started drawing again. Only now, his sketches looked different. Not just buildings, but people, movements, moments. His mom standing tall with a phone in her hand. A child in a hoodie, eyes lifted toward the sun. Crowds not backing down, because something had shifted in him. Not his fear, that would take longer, but his understanding that maybe he didn't have to disappear to be safe. Maybe the world didn't need him to shrink. Maybe, just maybe, it needed him to stand. The Monday after the video dropped, Pine Mart reopened with a different manager behind the counter. The original one, Mr. Collins, was on leave, though everyone knew that was just corporate code for let the storm pass. Danielle didn't care. She wasn't waiting for apologies. She had already filed a formal complaint with the city's Civilian Oversight Board. She sent copies of the police dispatch logs, the store video footage, and her own phone recording to the ACLU chapter in Charlotte. She wasn't just fighting for Tyrell anymore. She was fighting because this thing they had tried to bury under misunderstanding happened every day to kids like her son. And this time, it wasn't getting swept under a rug. But power doesn't break quietly. It pushes back. By Wednesday, the principal at Tyrell's middle school called Danielle in for a quick conversation. She sat stiff in the front office, hands folded in her lap, while Principal Raines, a white woman in her 50s with a calming voice and a practiced smile, sat across the desk. "We just want to make sure Tyrell is okay," she said, tapping a manila folder gently with her fingernails. "You know, with everything going on." Danielle raised an eyebrow. "He's fine. This meeting about his safety?" Raines hesitated. "There's been some tension. Other students bringing it up. One teacher said Tyrell was distracted in class yesterday." Danielle didn't flinch. "He was publicly humiliated, and you're worried he's distracted? I'm just trying to maintain a peaceful environment for all our students." Danielle leaned forward, eyes like steel. "A black child gets profiled and assaulted, and your concern is peace? I didn't come here for peace. I came here to make sure he's protected." The principal straightened her blouse. "Of course. We're on the same side." Danielle stood up. "We'll see." As she left, a black receptionist near the door caught her eye and gave a subtle nod. Small, almost invisible, but real. Danielle nodded back. At home, Tyrell kept mostly to himself. He wasn't angry. He wasn't afraid. He was somewhere in between, quiet but thinking, his eyes a little sharper than before. He still drew every night. But now he sketched people marching. He drew his mom standing with her phone in the air. He drew a boy, hoodie on, hands up, with a light behind him. He showed one to Danielle. She stared at it for a long time, then kissed the top of his head. "You're not just my boy," she whispered. "You're my mirror." Then that Friday came the letter. Typed, certified, delivered by hand. It was from Pine Mart's legal department. Danielle opened it while Tyrell sat across the table eating cereal. "Dear Ms. Simmons," it began. "We recognize the recent incident at our store has caused distress. While we acknowledge your concerns, we must inform you that continued public misrepresentation may be subject to legal review for defamation and disruption of business operations." Danielle read it twice, then folded it, slid it across the table. Tyrell read it. Spoon paused halfway to his mouth. "What does that mean?" "It means they're trying to scare us into being quiet. Is it working?" She looked up at him, then smiled. "No." She posted the letter online that same night. Captioned it, "You accused my child of stealing. You called the police on him. You searched his bag in front of strangers. You humiliated him. And now you're threatening me with legal action? Come get me." The post went viral. By morning, lawyers had already DM'd her offering pro bono representation. One of them, a civil rights attorney named Marcus O'Neill, called directly. "I've seen dozens of these," he said. "They scare people just enough to make the story go away." "Not this story," Danielle replied. "I know," Marcus said. "That's why I want in." He met with them that weekend in the library of a local community center, wore jeans, a hoodie, and had a notebook already half full with notes. Tyrell sat beside his mom, quiet, watching everything. Marcus didn't talk down to him, didn't pretend like he wasn't there. He looked Tyrell in the eye and said, "You were failed, and now we're going to show people what it looks like when you fight back with facts." Tyrell nodded. "They didn't even ask me what happened. That's how power works," Marcus said. "But now they're going to have to listen." The next week, a school counselor, Miss Sharp, a soft-spoken black woman who wore earth-tone scarves and smelled like coffee and paper, pulled Tyrell aside. "I watched the video," she said, "and I want you to know I'm proud of you." Tyrell looked down. "I didn't do anything." She smiled gently. "Exactly. You didn't do anything, and they still came for you. And you didn't run. That's strength, Tyrell. Not everyone can stand still when the world tries to erase you. He didn't know what to say, so he just nodded. Then she handed him a small flyer. Some older students and I are starting a youth forum. A space to talk about what it means to be black and seen. You don't have to come. Just think about it. He took it, folded it once, put it in his pocket. At home that night, Tyrell finally asked his mom, "Why do people think we're dangerous?" Danielle looked up from her laptop. "Because they don't see us. They see what they want to see, what they've been taught to see." "But I was just buying milk." "I know, baby," she said, "but some people look at a black child with a backpack and don't see a kid. They see a threat." Tyrell didn't say anything for a while. Then, "I don't want to be invisible anymore." Danielle stared at him. "You never forget the moment your child stops being a child." "I don't want that either," she whispered. The community kept showing up. Local artists offered to host a fundraiser for Tyrell's college savings. A retired teacher offered to tutor him in art and writing. A nonprofit sent Danielle a grocery gift card just because. Strangers began stopping her at the diner where she worked to say, "I saw what happened. I'm sorry. You're doing right." But the pressure didn't stop. Pine Mart's lawyers kept circling. The school asked again if Tyrell needed a little time away. Someone tagged graffiti near the apartment. "Teach your kid not to steal." Danielle painted over it herself, not with rage, with resolve. And when she finished, she wrote above it in clean, black paint. "He didn't steal. You just couldn't see him." One night, as Tyrell was getting ready for bed, he asked, "Do you think they'll ever say sorry?" Danielle pulled the blanket up over his shoulders. "Maybe," she said, "but we don't wait for sorry. We build something stronger." And with that, she kissed his forehead and turned off the light. But before the door closed all the way, she whispered, "They picked the wrong kid." And Tyrell, eyes wide open in the dark, whispered back, "No, Mama. They picked the wrong fight." It happened a few weeks after the protest died down. The internet had moved on, as it always does. The firestorm that once raged around Tyrell's name was now a flicker. The comments slowed. The news stories dried up. Pine Mart quietly rehired the same manager under a rotated position, and no charges were ever filed. It was like nothing had ever happened. Except Tyrell still felt it. In the hallways at school, he noticed the difference. Some kids acted like he was famous. That kid from the video, they fist bumped him, like it was cool, but others looked at him like a problem. A threat. A reminder of something they didn't want to deal with. The teachers had gone cold again. One refused to call on him during group discussion. Another marked him late, even when he wasn't. None of it was loud or blatant, just enough to chip away. And then, one day, during gym class, it went too far. Tyrell was walking out of a locker room when someone shoved him from behind. Not hard, not a fight, just disrespect. Enough to send a message. He turned. A white kid, older, bigger, stood there smirking. "Should have been arrested," he muttered, just loud enough for Tyrell to hear. Tyrell didn't speak, didn't swing, didn't even blink. He just walked away. But that night he didn't eat dinner, didn't draw, didn't say much at all. Danielle noticed. "You okay?" she asked. He nodded, lied, "Just tired." She didn't push, but she knew. You always know when your kid is fading. And that's when the real blow came. A letter, this time from the school district. It arrived folded into an official envelope typed in perfect legal language. Danielle read it in silence. Then again, then a third time, her face hardening. The letter claimed that, due to disruptive media attention, Tyrell's presence was causing a learning environment concern, and they were considering relocation for his well-being. Translation, they wanted him gone. Not because he did something wrong, but because he made the system look bad. Danielle sat in the kitchen, fists clenched on the table, jaw tight. This was what happened when you told the truth. You got erased from the room. She called the lawyer, called the school, called the damn district office. But what stayed with her was what she had to tell her son that night. "They want to move me?" Tyrell asked, his voice small. "They say it's for your protection," Danielle said. Tyrell stared at the wall. "Feels more like they're protecting themselves." Danielle nodded slowly. Yeah, it does. Silence filled the room. Heavy, unfair, familiar. Then Tyrell said something she didn't expect. Maybe I should have just stayed quiet. Danielle's heart cracked. She crossed the room fast and dropped to her knees in front of him. Don't you ever say that, she whispered. I'm tired. I know, baby. They treat me like I'm a problem. You're not. I didn't do anything, Mom. And it still wasn't enough. Danielle hugged him so tight it hurt. She could feel how small he felt, how broken, and she hated it, because this was the cost. This was what the world did to kids like hers, wore them down until they either snapped or vanished. That night, when Tyrell went to bed, Danielle sat alone in the living room. The lights off, TV silent, just her and the dark. And for the first time since this all began, she cried. Real, ugly, quiet tears. Not because she couldn't fight, but because she shouldn't have to. The next day, Tyrell skipped school. Danielle didn't make him go. He stayed in bed late. Didn't turn on music. Didn't draw. Just stared at the ceiling. But sometime around noon, he got up, grabbed his sketchbook, and walked outside. He didn't know where he was going. He just knew he had to move. He passed the empty lot near Brookwood. Past the liquor store, where people nodded at him like they knew him now. Past the park, where kids played like none of this existed. He ended up in front of the library, the same place where his mom met the lawyer, the same place he'd drawn his first protest poster. He walked inside. The librarian, an older woman with gray locks and glasses on a chain, looked up and smiled. Haven't seen you in a while. Tyrell nodded. Just wanted to sit somewhere quiet. You're always welcome, she said. We've got power in the quiet. He went to the back corner, where the shelves were taller than him, sat down, opened his sketchbook, and started to draw. Not a building this time, not a protest. He drew himself, not as he was, as he wanted to be, bigger, braver, shoulders squared, face calm, eyes steady. He drew his mom beside him. He drew people behind them, a crowd, a wave. He drew signs. He drew light. And when he was done, he stared at it, then whispered to no one, they can move me, but they can't erase me. That night, he showed the drawing to Danielle. She didn't speak for a long time. When she finally did, she said, You're not just mine anymore. You belong to every kid who's been told to stay quiet. Tyrell looked down. I don't want to be anyone's symbol. You don't have to be, she said. You just have to be honest. He nodded, and something shifted inside him. A quiet fire. Not loud, not angry, just steady. Because this time, he wasn't fighting to go viral. He was fighting not to disappear. The email came on a Thursday afternoon. Danielle was at work, mopping the lobby floor of the law firm she cleaned each morning. She almost missed it, another subject line in a crowded inbox. Simmons v. Pine Mart, urgent, external witness statement. She stopped mid-swipe. Tapped the screen. Inside was a message from a name she didn't recognize. Hi, Ms. Simmons. I know you don't know me, but I was at Pine Mart the day your son was stopped. I didn't say anything at the time. I just stood there. But I've carried it every day since. I used to work there. I know that manager. I've seen him do this before, not just your son. I'm ready to talk. I recorded something that day. A voice memo. I didn't know who to send it to until now. If you're still fighting, I want in. Rachel Miller. Danielle's hands trembled. She hit forward. Send it to Marcus, the lawyer. 3 minutes later, he called. I'm driving over, he said. We just found our match. Rachel Miller was 27, white, soft-spoken, and used to skin groceries for a living. She had worked at Pine Mart for 2 years before quitting the month after Tyrell's incident. I couldn't take it anymore, she said. It wasn't just Tyrell. It was constant. Always the black kids. Always the ones with hoodies. The ones from the projects. She sat in Marcus's office, holding a thumb drive like it was glass. I didn't mean to record it. I was on break. I had voice memos running because I was venting to myself, but I caught part of it. You can hear him. The manager. He says it outright. They played it. The audio was muffled, but clear enough. He fits the description. Hoodie, black, probably from Brookwood. I've seen that look before. Then, after a pause, laughter. Male voices. We'll just call in. It'll scare the others off for a while. Danielle sat frozen. Tyrell, seated beside her, stared at the table. I told you, he whispered. Marcus exhaled. This changes everything. The next day, Marcus filed for a full civil suit, not just against the store, but against the corporate chain, citing racial profiling, defamation, emotional trauma, and institutional negligence. And this time, the media came back. The local news showed up first, then regional, then national, because now it wasn't just one black boy's word against the system. It was receipts. It was audio. It was proof. Danielle stood in front of the courthouse for the first time, not as a witness, as a mother, as a woman done being polite. She wore her work shoes. Her name badge. Didn't try to look professional. She looked real. I'm not doing this just for Tyrell, she said. I'm doing this because our kids deserve to shop without being hunted. She didn't raise her voice, didn't scream. She didn't have to. The truth did the screaming for her. That night, Tyrell sat on the edge of his bed, staring at his reflection in the darkened window. He wasn't sure how to feel. He wasn't angry anymore. He wasn't scared. He just felt seen. The door cracked open. Danielle peeked in. You awake? He nodded. She walked in, sat beside him. You know what this means, right? She asked. Yeah, he said. You might have to speak. In public. Maybe even testify. He didn't answer. People are going to look at you, she said. Not all of them kind. Still silence. She reached out, gently touched his shoulder. I'll be right there. Tyrell turned to her. Then asked, will it change anything? Danielle blinked. Thought for a moment. I don't know, she said, but I know silence never did. The next week, Tyrell went back to school, not quietly this time. He walked in with his head up. Not arrogant, not defiant, just unafraid. And something shifted. One teacher, Mr. Delaney, who'd barely acknowledged him before, asked him if he needed extra time on assignments. Another teacher, Ms. Holmes, started incorporating real discussions into class, asking kids how media shapes the way people are perceived. Some of the kids rolled their eyes, but others, they listened. And one kid, 6th grade, small, nervous, pulled Tyrell aside in the hallway. Yo, thanks, he mumbled. My cousin got profiled last year. No one believed him. I showed them your video. It made a difference. Tyrell blinked. What's your name? Jalen. You draw? Nah. You want to learn? Jalen grinned. Yeah. Then pull up. At the next school board meeting, Marcus spoke for 15 minutes, then stepped aside, and Tyrell stood up. He walked slowly to the podium. The room full. Cameras on. Adults waiting. He didn't look scared. He looked calm. I'm not here to be a hero, he said. I just want what you already give to kids who don't look like me. I bought milk, bread, and toilet paper. That's it. And I got profiled, searched, treated like I was nothing. I didn't yell. I didn't run. I didn't fight back. I did everything right. And I still got hurt. Silence. He paused, looked up. I just want to go to school, draw, make my mom proud, be a kid. And I want that for every other kid, too. He stepped back, and the room stood up. All of them, not just clapping, seeing him. Outside, reporters swarmed. But Tyrell didn't say much. He let Danielle speak. And then they walked home. Quiet. Together. Stronger. Later that night, a delivery came to their door. A framed drawing. One of Tyrell's. Someone had scanned it, enlarged it, and printed it on canvas. It showed a boy in a hoodie, standing tall. Behind him, not a crowd of protesters, but kids. Different faces. Different ages. Same look of knowing. Same fire. At the bottom, in Danielle's handwriting. He didn't need to become a symbol. He just refused to disappear. Fallout wasn't loud. It came in emails, in revised statements, in carefully worded public comments. Pine Mart Corporate released a new press release. We recognize the hurt caused to the Simmons family. We are reviewing our policies to ensure equitable treatment of all customers. We do not tolerate discrimination in any form. It didn't include an apology, not a real one. It didn't mention Tyrell by name. didn't acknowledge what actually happened: the grabbing, the call to the police, the humiliation. It was a statement to save them, not to honor him. Danielle saw it for what it was: corporate survival. So did everyone else. The school district followed suit. The same principal who had once hinted at relocating Tyrell now sent home a letter inviting Danielle and Tyrell to participate in a student safety and equity task force. Danielle read the letter aloud and laughed, not with amusement, but with something harder. "They didn't want us in the room," she said. "Now, they want us on the panel." Tyrell raised an eyebrow. "Are we doing it?" She looked at him. "You wanna?" He shrugged. "Might as well. They're gonna talk about us either way." So they joined, but they didn't join quiet. At the first task force meeting, Tyrell wore his hoodie pulled halfway up, sat at the table, back straight, listened, took notes, spoke when it mattered. Danielle, on the other hand, didn't wait. She looked the superintendent in the eye and said, "You wanted him gone. Don't forget that. But we stayed. So you're going to listen now." And they did. Not because they wanted to, because they had to. Still, not everyone supported them. Some parents whispered behind Danielle's back at school events. One mother pulled her son away from Tyrell during field trip. A letter arrived at their door and signed, saying, "Why can't you people ever be satisfied?" Danielle showed it to Marcus. He shook his head. That's what they do when they're losing. They throw hate on paper because they're too scared to say it with their name attached. She threw it in the trash, didn't blink. Meanwhile, Tyrell kept going to school like usual. But everything felt different. Not because people were nicer. Some were sure. Some were even awkwardly supportive. But the real shift? He no longer felt like he had to shrink. He took up space. He raised his hand in class. He joined the after-school art club. He even got asked to help design a mural for the side of the library. A mural about justice and community. He sketched the first draft in silence, headphones in, hoodie on. When he showed it to the teacher, she blinked. "You drew yourself," she said, surprised. Tyrell looked at the drawing, a young black boy standing in a grocery store aisle, his head held high, with shelves behind him filled not with products, but with faces. Witnesses. Truth-tellers. "Yeah," he said. "That's kind of the point." Danielle kept fighting in her own way. She met with other parents from Brookwood Terrace, started organizing a transportation fund for kids who needed to get across town to better schools. She began working fewer shifts thanks to community support and donations that had poured in during the lawsuit. She used the time not to rest, but to teach, not in a classroom, on doorsteps, in community centers, at folding tables. "Don't wait for them to protect your kid," she'd say. "Document everything. Ask questions they don't want you to ask. Show up when you're not invited." People listened, because Danielle wasn't preaching. She was surviving and winning, and that made people lean in. Meanwhile, the lawsuit continued. The corporation tried to delay it, drag it out, throw lawyers at it until everyone got tired. But Danielle and Marcus didn't flinch. They built their case, and the discovery phase turned up more than expected. 2 prior complaints from customers, one from a former employee, and a written unofficial protocol that instructed managers to visually monitor high-risk patrons, especially youth in loose clothing or oversized hoodies. There it was, written down. Racism policy wrapped. Tyrell sat at the table the night they found it, staring at the printout. "They really said it," he muttered. Danielle rubbed his shoulder. "They always say it. They just think we won't find it." And then Pinemark caved, not publicly, not proudly, but in a closed-door settlement meeting. Marcus came out of the office with a look on his face Danielle had never seen. Not joy, not anger. Satisfaction. "They folded," he said. Danielle blinked. All of it. All of it. Full settlement. Public acknowledgement. Policy reform. And he smiled. "They're paying. A lot." Danielle didn't celebrate. She closed her eyes, breathed in, breathed out, then looked at her son. "We did that." Tyrell didn't smile. He nodded. That was enough. The money didn't change them. Danielle paid off the medical debt, moved them to a better unit in a safer neighborhood, set aside a college fund for Tyrell, bought new sneakers, but they stayed grounded. Tyrell still rode the bus, still sketched in his same old notebook, still kept the old receipt from Pine Mart, now wrinkled and yellowed, taped to the back cover, a reminder of who tried to define him and who he decided to be instead. People kept asking if Danielle planned to run for office. She always laughed. "I don't need a title to protect my son." Tyrell, meanwhile, was invited to speak on a youth panel. He said yes, wrote his speech in 3 nights. It ended with this: "I don't want to be remembered for what happened in that store. I want to be remembered for what I built after it." And when he stepped off that stage, people didn't cheer. They stood in silence, because they felt it. Not the moment, the truth. And that's something no press release can ever bury. Recognition didn't come like a lightning bolt. It wasn't a headline. It wasn't a blue checkmark. It wasn't someone knocking on the door, offering him a scholarship. It came like most real things do, quietly, through a door cracked just wide enough to step through. It was a Tuesday when Ms. Sharp, the school counselor, pulled Tyrell aside after social studies. He thought it was about his attendance. He'd missed a few days during the hearings, and the district had started tracking him more closely, not out of care but control. But when he stepped into her office, she didn't mention grades or paperwork. She slid a folder across the desk and said, "They asked me to nominate 1 student this year for the local Youth Voice Award. I chose you." Tyrell stared. He didn't speak. Every year, they pick someone who's shown resilience, leadership, and she paused, looking for the right word, grace. "And I've watched you carry yourself through the worst kind of pressure with more grace than most grown men." Tyrell's eyes dropped. He didn't know what to say. Ms. Sharp added, "I don't care if you win. Just know I see you." Those words stuck with him more than any award. I see you. The ceremony was small, held in a community center gym with folding chairs, cold punch, and kids dressed in their best church outfits. Parents clapping too loud, balloons floating against fluorescent lights. Tyrell almost didn't go, but Danielle insisted, not because she needed anyone to clap for her son, but because she knew how long he'd been ignored, dismissed, flattened into someone else's story. "Don't go for them," she said. "Go for you." So he went. He wore a white button-up shirt, slightly too big, and jeans that weren't torn at the knees. Danielle pressed them herself. He still wore his old sneakers. He said they felt lucky. When they called his name, Tyrell walked up to the microphone. He didn't smile big, didn't try to be charming. He just stood there, took a breath, and said, "I didn't ask to be known. I didn't want to be in that video. I just wanted to buy groceries. But when people started treating me like I didn't matter, my mom made sure they couldn't ignore me. I'm not brave because I spoke up. I'm brave because I stayed in the room when they tried to shut the door." The crowd was quiet. Then someone clapped, then more, and then the whole room stood. Not because he'd performed, because he'd told the truth. Back at school, something shifted, not in the system. That would take longer, maybe forever, but in the people. Teachers who used to avoid him now asked his opinion in class. Students who'd laughed at the rumors now nodded at him in the hall. It wasn't pity. It wasn't fame. It was respect. Even the principal, the same one who once tried to move him out for his safety, pulled him into her office one afternoon and said, "I've made a lot of mistakes this year, but I'm learning. Because of you." Tyrell didn't say much, just nodded and walked out. Sometimes dignity doesn't need a speech. Then came the mural. It started as a school art project, a generic diversity thing with clip art ideas and safe slogans like "Be kind," and "We're all equal." But when the student art club got involved, they pushed for something different. "Let's tell our story," Maya said, a senior who'd been part of the student forum with Tyrell. They turned to him. "Want to lead it?" He hesitated, then nodded. Tyrell didn't want his face painted 10 feet tall, didn't want a halo over his head or a fist in the air. That wasn't his style. Instead, he designed something simple, a grocery store aisle. But the shelves didn't hold products. They held faces. Kids like him. Names. Eyes wide open. At the end of the aisle was a door. Open. light pouring through. It was titled, "We Were Always Worth Seeing." When the mural was unveiled, no one clapped right away. They just stood there, quiet. One teacher wiped a tear. Another student whispered, "That's us." That was enough. Later that day, Tyrell stayed behind to clean the brushes. Ms. Holmes, his art teacher, walked in. "I saw your drawing," she said. "The first sketch. It had your name signed in the corner." Tyrell shrugged. "Yeah." She paused, then said, "When you started this school year, I barely noticed you." "I know," he said, "but now, when I look at you, I see someone I want other kids to grow up like." Tyrell didn't know how to take that, so he just said, "Thank you," and meant it. At home, that night, Danielle was folding laundry when Tyrell walked into the kitchen holding a manila envelope. "What's that?" she asked. He pulled out a framed certificate, Youth Voice Award, Tyrell Simmons, and placed it on the table. Danielle smiled. "You want it up on a wall?" He shook his head. "Not yet." "Why not?" He looked down at the floor, then said, "'Cause I'm not done yet." Danielle's smile faded into something deeper. She walked over, pulled him into a hug. "Neither am I." And for the first time in a long time, they just stood there. No fight, no fear, just space to be. Recognition doesn't fix everything. It doesn't erase the trauma, doesn't erase the memory of that day, the weight of being seen only after being hurt. But it does one thing. It tells you that what you endured mattered, that your name will not just be attached to pain, but to power. And for Tyrell, that was enough. He wasn't famous. He wasn't a movement. He was a kid with a backpack, a hoodie, a pencil, and a mother who refused to let him disappear. And now, the world knew his name. Not because he shouted, because he refused to stay silent. It started with a knock on the library door. Tyrell was sitting in the back corner, working on a sketch for a new mural at the community center. Pencil smudges on his fingers, headphones in, hoodie halfway up, same way he'd always worked. The librarian, Miss Florence, tapped his table. "There's a student outside," she said, "sixth grader. Says he's looking for the art kid from the news." Tyrell raised an eyebrow. "From the what?" She smiled. "You, sweetie." He got up, walked out front. The boy was small, skinny, maybe 11. Backpack slumped over one shoulder, shoes untied. He stood near the help desk, arms crossed like he didn't trust the room. Tyrell recognized the posture. He used to wear it. "You looking for me?" he asked. The boy nodded, nervous. "You draw." The boy shook his head. "Not really. I mean, sometimes." "You like it?" A pause. "Yeah." "Then you draw." The boy looked up. That was the start. The library gave Tyrell a small room on Wednesdays. Nothing fancy. 2 folding tables, a whiteboard, and whatever pencils people donated. They called it the block. No sign on the door. No registration. Just a space. Every week, 2 or 3 kids showed up. Then 5. Then 10. Some came to sketch. Some came to sit. Some didn't speak at all, not at first. But they stayed. Tyrell didn't lecture. He didn't try to be inspirational. He just showed up, asked how they were doing, and made sure they had something to put on paper. Sometimes he'd leave out a prompt. "What does power look like to you?" "Draw a door." "What's behind it?" "Show me a place where you feel safe." The drawings came back full of monsters, city fists, stars, stairwells, cracked sidewalks, and windows wide open. Each one a confession. Each one a kind of healing. Tyrell never judged, just nodded past another pencil. And when the last kid left, he'd sit alone for a few minutes. Not tired, full. Danielle came by one afternoon to drop off snacks. She stood at the door for a moment watching. Tyrell didn't notice her. He was helping a girl fix the arm on her sketch of a superhero. She was giggling. He was patient, calm, gentle. Danielle didn't interrupt. Later at home, she said, "You teaching now?" Tyrell shrugged. "Not really." "You sure? 'Cause that girl said you were her mentor." He looked away, bashful. "You good at it," she said. He didn't argue. Word spread. A local journalist did a short feature called "The Boy with the Pencil," not about the lawsuit, not about the protests, just about the block. Some kids fight with volume, the article said. Tyrell Simmons fights with stillness and leaves paper trails everywhere he goes. They printed that quote, taped it to the library wall. Tyrell rolled his eyes, but secretly he liked it. Not the attention, the truth in it. The mural at the community center was finished that spring. It covered an entire wall outside the building, 5 panels, each painted by a different group of kids under Tyrell's guidance. The first showed a grocery store, the second a classroom, the third a cracked sidewalk with weeds growing through, the fourth a row of apartment buildings lit from within, and the fifth a child holding a pencil, facing a blank canvas, arms open ready. It was titled, "We Wrote Ourselves Back In." At the unveiling, no one made speeches. Tyrell stood in the back. A little boy tugged at his mom's sleeve and pointed at the mural. "Is that him?" The mom nodded. "That's the boy who stood up." The kid stared. "He looks normal." His mom smiled. "He is." One afternoon, Tyrell was walking home when he saw an older man standing outside the convenience store near Brookwood Terrace. The man nodded at him. "You Danielle's boy?" Tyrell nodded back. "Yes, sir. I seen you. I seen all of it. Your mama, she raised a good one." Tyrell murmured a thank you. The man leaned closer. "Keep going. We need kids like you. Not loud, just steady." Then he walked off. Tyrell stood there for a second, unsure what to feel. He didn't say it out loud, but he held onto the words for the rest of the day. Not loud, just steady. Legacy isn't something you plan. It's what happens when you keep showing up, week after week, even after the headlines fade, even after the lawyers stop calling, even after the world stops clapping. Tyrell never asked to lead. He just refused to let what happened be the end of his story, and in doing that he gave others a place to begin theirs. One night, Danielle found Tyrell sitting at the kitchen table with a stack of envelopes. "What's that?" she asked. He looked up almost shy. "Letters. For the kids. I'm leaving some in their folders next week." She walked over, picked one up, opened it. Inside was a hand-drawn sketch of a door with a message underneath. "Whatever they said you were, you get to decide who you are." Danielle stared at the paper. Tears welled in her eyes. She sat down beside him. "You remember what I said the day it all started?" she asked. "You said they picked the wrong kid." She smiled. "No, baby. I said they picked the wrong mother." Tyrell laughed. Danielle added, "But you know what? They picked the wrong fight, too." And they sat there, mother and son. No war left in them. Just peace. Just purpose. Just legacy, written in pencil. The ripple didn't look like a wave. It looked like an email. Then 2. Then 20. Teachers from other cities. Parents. Community organizers. All writing some version of the same thing. "We saw what your son did. Thank you. We used your mural as part of a classroom discussion. Our students started their own version of the block. You don't know us, but we needed your story." Danielle printed them out, put them in a folder. She never showed them to Tyrell all at once. She waited, gave him one at a time, like light, small doses, letting him see what he'd started without overwhelming him with what it meant. One morning, a school from Raleigh called. They wanted to bring a group of middle schoolers to visit the mural. "We think it would mean something if they saw where it came from," the teacher said. Danielle asked Tyrell if he wanted to meet them. He hesitated, then said, "Yeah, okay." The group arrived in a yellow bus, kids pouring out with phones, backpacks, and more curiosity than caution. Tyrell stood by the edge of the mural, hands in his pockets, nodding as the teacher introduced him. "This is the young man behind the design," she said. One of the students asked, "What's it feel like to have your art on a wall?" Tyrell looked at the painting, then said, "It's not mine anymore. It belongs to whoever sees themselves in it." The teacher blinked. "That's beautiful." Tyrell shrugged. "It's just true." 2 weeks later, another invitation came, this time from a youth conference in Atlanta. They wanted Tyrell to speak on a panel called "The Power of Staying Visible." Marcus, his lawyer, offered to come with. Danielle offered to skip work and ride down with them. But Tyrell said no. "I think I can do this on my own." Danielle didn't argue. She just handed him a clean hoodie, packed his bag with snacks, and kissed his forehead twice like she always did when she was nervous. "You got this," she said. "I know." The room was packed. Teenagers, teachers, parents, activists, local press. Tyrell sat on stage between a young organizer from Detroit and a poet from Mississippi. They were older, louder, confident in that "I've done this before" kind of way. When it was Tyrell's turn to speak, he stepped up to the mic, took a breath, and told the story. Not the viral version, the real one. The bread, the milk, the accusation, the fear, and what came after. Then he paused, looked at the crowd. "I didn't want to be a leader," he said. "I just wanted to matter." Silence. He added, "You don't need 1 million views to change something. You just need someone to hear you. And sometimes the first person who needs to hear you is yourself." People clapped. Not fast, not performative. The kind of clap that comes from somewhere deeper than applause. Back home, the youth group at his old middle school started a new project, a book. They called it Letters to the Kid Who Stood Still. Every student wrote one. Tyrell read them at night, one at a time. Some made him laugh. Some made him ache. One just said, "You gave me permission to breathe in my own body." That's all. He kept that one in his sketchbook, taped inside the back cover. The world didn't shift all at once. The school system was still slow. Police reform was still messy. People still crossed the street when they saw a hoodie they didn't trust. But teachers started asking better questions. Students started pushing back sooner. And in a dozen different towns, kids who once would have stayed quiet didn't. They stayed standing. Danielle started getting invitations, too. Panel discussions, advocacy forums, podcasts. She turned most of them down. "I'm not trying to be a celebrity mom," she joked. But one group, a grassroots coalition of Black mothers fighting for educational equity, caught her attention. She went to one meeting, just to listen. She ended up staying 3 hours. By the next month, she was helping write their legislative testimony. "Y'all done messed around and activated me," she laughed. They called her Ms. D with the receipts. She wore the name like armor. One afternoon, as Tyrell and Danielle walked home from the community center, a woman with 2 young boys stopped them on the sidewalk. "You're him, right?" she asked Tyrell. He nodded, unsure. She turned to her sons. "This is the boy I told you about." One of them, maybe 9, stepped forward. "I saw the mural." Tyrell smiled. "You like it?" The boy nodded. "I drew my own." Tyrell knelt down. "Got it with you?" The kid pulled a folded piece of paper from his hoodie pocket. It showed a kid with his eyes closed, but light coming out from behind them. Tyrell looked at the boy. "What's that mean?" The boy shrugged. "I don't know, but it felt real." Tyrell nodded. "Then that's what it means." The mom mouthed "thank you" as they walked away. Danielle touched Tyrell's shoulder. "You okay?" He nodded, but his eyes were full. Not tears, just everything. Legacy doesn't echo loudly at first. It starts in whispers, in drawings, in classrooms, in little kids with light behind their eyelids. It spreads not because someone tells it to, but because truth finds its way through cracks. Tyrell never wanted to be followed. He just wanted to walk without fear. But by walking anyway, he left a path behind him, one that others now follow. The air was cool the day they took the mural down. It wasn't being erased, it was being preserved. The community center was undergoing renovations, and the mural was being moved panel by panel into the city's new cultural museum. They called it a tribute to local youth leadership. Tyrell stood across the street, hands in his hoodie, watching workers gently lift the painted wood from a wall. He didn't feel sad. He felt ready to let it go, because it didn't belong to him anymore. It had done its job. So had he. That night, the house was quiet. Danielle was doing dishes. The radio played old R&B, soft and nostalgic. Tyrell sat on the couch, sketchbook in his lap, TV on mute. He wasn't drawing, just flipping pages. Looking back, each sketch told a part of the story, his story, even if he hadn't meant it that way. A picture of the aisle, the cracked sidewalk, the backpack, the door, The kid with his hands visible. The pencil that never left his grip. He reached the last page. Blank. He stared at it for a long time. Then closed the book. For now. Danielle walked over and sat beside him. You ever think about how far we've come? She asked. Sometimes, he said. She looked around their place, better than where they started, still humble, still home. I used to pray you'd just stay safe, she said. Now, I pray the world stays ready for you. Tyrell smiled a little. You still scared? He asked. Danielle laughed softly. Always. Then she looked him in the eyes. But I'm proud more than I'm scared. Tyrell nodded. Me too. A week later, the city hosted a small dedication at the museum. They didn't make a big deal about it, just a few chairs, a podium, and a plaque. Danielle didn't even want to go at first. It ain't for us, she said, but Tyrell convinced her. You said don't disappear, right? She smirked. Using my own words on me now? They showed up late, stood in the back, watched as the museum director thanked donors and local officials and the young artist who inspired all of this. They didn't say Tyrell's name, just pointed to the wall. The panels stood side by side, polished, lit, framed in oak. The final panel, the child with the pencil, had a new line beneath it. It read, Some stood loud, some stood still. He stood steady. Danielle read it, then looked at her son, and, for once, she didn't have anything to say. She didn't need to. After the ceremony, a young girl walked up to Tyrell. She was maybe 9, wearing a jean jacket covered in buttons and pins. She looked nervous. Are you the one who drew all that? She asked, pointing to the mural. Yeah, Tyrell said. That was me. The girl hesitated, then held something out. It was a notebook. Small, beat up, full of drawings. Tyrell flipped through it. Pages of superheroes, cities, monsters, dreamscapes. You did all this, he asked. She nodded. My teacher showed us your story. I didn't know you could do something with drawing. I thought it was just a thing you do when you're bored. Tyrell handed it back. It's more than that, he said. It's how you leave a mark. The girl blinked. You think I can do something with it, too? He smiled. I know you can. Back home, later that night, Tyrell sat on the steps outside their apartment. The stars were out. No sirens. Just the hum of streetlights and the sound of someone laughing down the block. He looked out at the street, the same street where it all started. Same cracked pavement. Same noise. But everything was different now. He was different. He didn't feel erased. Didn't feel invisible. Didn't feel like he had to shrink to fit into other people's peace. He belonged. Right here. Right now. He reached into his backpack, pulled out a blank sheet of paper, and began to draw. Not for the news. Not for the fight. Just for him. For the first time in a long time, his hand moved with no weight on it. No fear. Just purpose. Just love. Just truth. And somewhere out there, another kid was standing in a store aisle, nervous. Another mother was watching too closely to blink. Another pencil was waiting to be picked up. The fight wasn't over. But the silence was. Forever. He didn't change the world. He just made sure it couldn't keep looking away.